And I am gonna open a Red Bull because that's needed, because in Sweden it's not morning, it's evening. And I'm gonna start sharing my screen. And you're all here for the character art open day, right? Yes, yes, yes. Cool. So I'm gonna just quickly do a rundown of who I am. I've been doing like I am Oscar Hallberg. If you haven't seen it on my name on my little window, that's me. I was the lead character artist at Arrowhead, but we kind of like shuffled out the responsibilities. I'm like a senior two character artist, but I have the responsibility of a lead when needed, and I've been leading kind of like a team owner for multidisciplinary teams over at Arrowhead, like managing kind of like teams of like designers, programmers, artists, and whatnot, like doing the kind of like production planning and stuff like that. Uh, and I've been working on Helldivers 2, which I'm currently doing as well, which is kind of like my current occupation, basically. So I oversee all the art direction and production for our kind of any kind of new enemy content and maintaining current content that goes into the game, which is a fantastic, super fun task. It's a bit tricky because it's a lot of work, and like it's a very systematic game, so we have to really kind of basically everything we add have like unforeseen ripple effects that we have to kind of clean up afterwards, but it is what it is. But before that, I have just been I was intern over at DICE doing the Battlefield stuff, which was awesome, fantastic team with my old mentor. And then I went to a small startup that was called Fall Damage back then. We worked on a like I did stuff like this, like kind of like first person competitive shooter stuff for a like a competitive tactical shooter. I worked there for a couple of years. Um, I got the opportunity to kind of branch out, and not only because as a character artist, it's very easy to kind of be put in your little, you get put into your little box, and you get like handed a concept, and you take that concept, and you then you run with it, and you kind of, oh, here it is, it's done. Like do what you will with this. Hopefully, I can get a new concept to do. But at that place, I got the opportunity to kind of branch out and work more with tech art and do shaders and do presentations and marketing stuff and stuff like that. So I helped out a lot with kind of like the general game presentation and art direction, which kind of got me started very early, and not only doing Soldier Guy 5 or something, which was fantastic. The game sadly kind of, as most kind of startups do, did kind of would fizzle out, and I jumped ship to Arrowhead, which was kind of like for me it was like a perfect fit, and I've just been there since. Like I'm such a I wasn't when I started, but I quickly became a like a 40K nerd, because like that studio is kind of like deeply marinated in anything Games Workshop. So like in the whole kind of design fantasy is very kind of inspired by that and pop culture in general, and that's me. So I'm like glued to that studio, basically. Um, and so that's me, right? And in my free time, I do everything from like some kind of like it's a lot of creature stuff, obviously. Um, I'm a big like Blender head. I've been using Blender professionally ever since I started. For initially only I only used it for retopology, which was kind of like the in Swedish we call it inkörsdrog, which is basically like a starter drug kind of that got me started into the Blender ecosystem. And I went from there, I did the retopology, and I was like, oh, if only I didn't have to go to Maya. And then I started doing the UVs, and then suddenly like now I haven't even used ZBrush for over 1.5 years at Arrowhead. Uh, so I'm doing all the sculpting as well, which is really kind of awesome and new, and it's a big challenge. But yeah, so I'm obviously very kind of creature oriented. I like doing that stuff. It's kind of like creatures, sci-fi, monsters. Uh, that's kind of my specialty. But I have experience with doing like general characters, guy in a t-shirt, zombies, or big bugs or robots or whatever. Uh, so that's me. I was thinking, any questions so far, by the way? Like turbo speed run of the whole kind of. Just unmute and talk. It's gonna be fine.
Oh, sorry. I just have to leave a bit early at 2, if that's okay. I didn't want to be rude, so I'll be cutting off at 2.
That's no worries.
Okay.
Uh, I'm just specific, like if talk too quick as well, because I just got back from like I cooked a bunch of hamburgers and then I drove back here and I left like my family. We're at our summer house place, so I'm a little bit uh, up and running in my talking already. So just stop me if you want to ask more questions or just kind of because I might not really look at the chat and stuff. So if you have questions, just yell at me and I will be abruptly kind of stalled and then we will take it from there. Cool. Then I assume no other questions about me before we go into go.
Hi.
Hello?
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Um, so my question is not about you.
Mm.
It's in general, like what are you gonna cover in this webinar? Personally, I struggle with anatomy a lot. I do have like books like Anatomy for Sculptors. I was using it for another one of the workshops I'm doing with Vertex. It's for creature design, and I was like
Mm.
super struggling with it. Um, So if you can help me give some tips on, okay, this is how you should do the anatomy or the muscles, or how this is how you should be putting the character down.
I think if I interpret your question correctly, is that you're kind of struggling in kind of nailing the made up anatomy and to make the shapes kind of glue together properly. Is that correct?
Mhm. I mean,
Uh,
at the end, when I look at the things I made, it looks bad, crappy, and not
it
satisfying.
probably doesn't look bad and crappy, but I understand the feeling, sadly. But uh, it's quite hard to give like concrete answer because a lot of it is just kind of brush mileage, right? In this webinar, what I've been told, maybe I'm completely incorrect and I'm going to pivot, but I've been told to kind of cover the whole kind of term structure. So I'm going to run through basically every week of the character art, like term 2 and 3. But maybe that was not what everybody else is expecting. But for that, I would probably just say to kind of just work more on basing your work on existing animal anatomy. There are some kind of uh, stereotypes out there, kind of like that I usually pick from. And I try to kind of pick parts of different animals to kind of make sense for what I'm doing currently. Um, and then always kind of treat it as I don't sculpt, like I don't paint in the shapes. I try to kind of uh, what do you call it? I hint of the shapes. I kind of create the shapes and then I kind of cover them in like a layer of fat or something, kind of glue it all together. It's kind of like if you're making music, you're adding a reverb to kind of make it kind of stick together a little bit better. Um, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but then it's kind of like a bunch of like non-concrete feedback, like, oh, you have to have this kind of contrasting contra shapes and blah blah blah. But usually, sadly, it's just brush mileage, and you're not gonna get the perfect answer out of it in like book or stuff. It's basically just kind of doing short projects a lot of times and making sure that you actively set a goal for each project, so that you kind of like this time I really want to nail the leg anatomy of this dog, right? And then you do that, and then like once that's done, you move on to the next thing. Like I'm doing a horse head. Um, does that make sense? Because after a while, you kind of build your kind of back of the mind library of shapes that you can draw from when you're doing something completely made up. It's the same when you're doing like faces or portraits. You kind of just have to, like initially, you have to kind of really uh, analyze, focus, break down, and see what you're looking at, and also know what's beneath the surface as well. So you kind of, okay, so this shape is from like a bone, it's not a muscle, right? Something like that. But after a while, you kind of know that it's just a shape here, and as long as that's kind of like falls in a certain way, it's gonna look okay. And then you can kind of be more creative with it. So kind of like first learning the rules and then kind of breaking them, and because you know what you're doing a little bit. Uh, does that answer it a little bit?
I think so. It kind of answers a little bit of my troubles. Um,
The
like
answer is kind of like, sorry, there's no way but forward. But it's,
um,
uh,
I
yeah.
was gonna ask you if you can share like what should be the exercise we should or drills someone should do to kind of practice the character sculpting or modeling stuff?
I would probably just pick smaller projects without a lot of complex parts that is not related to actual character modeling. Like something I would not do, like if you're struggling with faces, I would not do a knight with a full armor, right? I would do like one face per day until like that, like let's say like 50 faces, right? It's a lot of time though, but like you get what I mean. Um, I think that there is no kind of like it is sadly like not really a here's the perfect formula. You have to kind of do structured practice regularly. Like 1 hour per day is better than 5 hours every Sunday. And kind of make sure that you track what you're doing, how long time you want to spend on it, and make sure you finish it. Make sense?
Yep, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like learning to draw. Like brush mileage is kind of like you can think about drawing how much you want, like, but unless you just draw, you're never gonna get better. But yeah. I just want to make sure because so I don't haven't got like multiple informations. I'm gonna talk a bunch about what I usually run through for the whole character art track. Does that sound correct to people here in the chat? Like, is that what people are here from? And I can't get the chat up. Where's the chat? What? Yes, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna run for that. Okay, cool. I'm gonna jump to this huge ass board here. Okay. This kind of covers every week in the perfect term 2 and 3 scenario. And hopefully this text is really small for you, but you can still see it, right? And I can kind of zoom in and show things. Then is that is the case? I'm gonna assume yes. So we have 2 terms with a focus on with like 12 weeks per term that with the target of doing like 2 major kind of capstones, right? One smaller one in caps in term 2 and one larger one in capstone in term 3. And usually what that is that we pick something simple for term 2, which is kind of like usually I say do a bust, like you do a head up to the shoulders or whatnot, because anything more than that, if you don't have experience in the character art pipeline, you have basically no idea what you're doing or what you're scoping for. So during term 2, we have to do something that I know is going to be feasible enough for you to kind of get through and establish your pipeline, right? So you know when you're going to term 3, what were your pain spots and your kind of struggle like parts, so you can get a clearer kind of scope going into the bigger project. Otherwise, it's going to be like you overshoot both terms, so you don't get anything out of it. And I'm usually very, very boring when it comes to picking concepts. Like people bring me this kind of like, for this term 2 capstone, I'm gonna make this big ass dragon, right? With it has like 500 machine guns and multifaceted diamond armor. Okay, but it is a bust, right? It stops here. Then I'm probably gonna look. Oh, what about the horns only? Let's just do the horns, because the important part is not really the outcome of term 2, even though that's usually a good outcome. The important part is kind of get all the steps and puzzle pieces into place so you know what you're actually going into. Because otherwise you're not gonna get any type of foundation of how to plan your project and make sure that you don't pick stuff that is above your kind of current skill level, right? Because that's the target always. You want to find a way to kind of create stuff that gets finished. And then it's not always about making the most crazy thing. So, any questions on the term 2 kind of capstone thinking? I'm looking at the chat now for once. All clear. I am the most clear instructor ever. Okay, so it's broken down into kind of four parts, 5 parts, 5 parts. So we have the concept and blockout, which is the initial stage. And then we have the high poly creation, which is like the largest chunk, right? Because that's usually the biggest pain spot. Because if you don't know ZBrush or Blender or whatever you have, like some kind of sculpting application, that's a big kind of, usually it's kind of like a humbling experience as well, because you get this kind of like, how are people even doing anything when you start sculpting from scratch? After that, we have low poly, and then we have UVs and baking, and then we have texturing and presentation. This looks like a lot of time. It's not. But we're going to go through every week a little bit. So during the concept and blockout phase, like these 2 weeks is to me a chance to get to know what your ambitions are, what you're looking to do, what you kind of are ambitious about. So during the first session, we have like an introduction kind of roundtable where I kind of go over. Usually, I do something like everybody has to talk a little bit about who they are, their experience, and their kind of favorite game, and then also what type of work they are most passionate about. Like, do you want to do the Last of Us kind of characters, or do you want to do like Elden Ring stuff, or do you want to do just regular creatures, or you just like I love dinosaurs, and you just do that, like because that is really important when we go to picking out the concepts, because a lot of this stuff is really technical and quite boring from when you start to kind of pick it up. So you have to find something that is interesting enough of a topic matter for you to be able to kind of push through the sluggish parts all the way to the end. So I'd rather let you pick something that is a little bit, maybe it's a little bit too much creature to kind of be like a character. But if you're really passionate about it, it could be a useful use case for kind of learning the pipeline that is the same across all types of characters. So that's kind of what we try and establish in these 2 weeks. So we try to lock down a concept. We go over the way of working, how I work, how you kind of gonna get feedback from me, and how the rest of the school kind of is set up. And then we start gathering concepts. You get some assignment from me how to do that, and kind of what I expect to get like an approved concept before we go into the high poly creation. I also cover the kind of like what is a blockout. Usually I bring some example kind of, because people usually go into like making a blockout as something very, very fleshed out. That's also kind of depending on your experience. Like sometimes we have people who are reskilling from other 3D areas, and they are kind of very well versed already, so they have no issue kind of just repurposing their already existing skills into character art. But in most cases, kind of like the blockout can be a little bit overwhelming, but you think you're going to do way more than you should. The part of this stage is to kind of block out everything you need to have in the finished product to not forget it, basically. It doesn't have to have the perfect kind of proportions, the perfect colors, or everything. It's just like really rough placeholders for everything in the concept, so we can kind of talk about the general shapes and proportions. You can get accustomed to like working with multiple subtools and also working in ZBrush, and also kind of breaking the ice with getting feedback and sharing your stuff with the class, right? In a very like everybody's sharing stuff that is not finished, so it's very easy to kind of just share it. Alongside that, there's also some awesome like really tricky anatomy assignments that go through the school. That is, the experience is usually like, is that the only assignment I get besides the concept stuff? And then next week is like, I didn't manage all the assignments, sorry, because they were too tricky. So that's just to kind of get some kind of brush mileage going and something to practice while we kind of gather the list of two. I'm gonna go over that as well after I've covered the terms. And I'm not gonna get super in depth into term 3, so don't worry about that. I'm gonna it's just term 2 that's very kind of talking heavy. So that's the concept and blockout stage. We need to nail the concept, what you want to do, what scope, how we will work, and what you expect out of the term, right? Because my goal is that you get something you are proud of in the end, in a way that you also get the strong foundation of a pipeline you can carry with you afterwards. Okay, and then we go into high poly, and that's the big slab of meat of the term. And we just kind of, we review the assignments, we get feedback on the blockout, we have class demos and Q&A where I just kind of go over whatever questions the students have or you have. Like, because usually I create like some kind of, you share your files and models with me, I open them on my computer and I do like live sculptovers and I give you like feedback based on that. And then you get those files back as a reference. And we kind of have this very hands-on feedback workflow, which I think works very well because a lot of things are kind of like hard to just draw over and explain. It's more like easier to kind of show a video and like talk about it while I do it. And it also it also kind of works as a way of storing workflows I want you to be able to kind of go back and look at. So then maybe I find a use case in a capstone that I'm kind of, oh, this is perfect to show how to create this kind of clean topology by reprojecting blah, 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 blah. And then I do that, and then people can go back and look at that. But that's basically 4 weeks of doing that. And it's just the same thing because usually it's kind of like this is the hardest part of it to kind of get a good step, right? Because all of the other stuff, like low poly, UVs, texture, and presentation, it's kind of dependent on what you get out of the high poly creation. So it's just high poly start, continuation, and then finish high poly. A finish high poly from Finland. After that is low poly, just 2 weeks. That is, I'm gonna go over it in a bit, but that's not a lot of time depending on your like previous experience. But it's the same here. We kind of go over the like common tools, common workflows, how to do it, how to approach it. What are the common game art prioritizations? Like what's the difference between working characters for games versus movies, etc. Stuff like that. How do we kind of prioritize density and what's the kind of like texture resolution you want to aim at and stuff like that. After that, we move over to UVs and baking. And that's, I mean, it's 2 weeks more of that. We go over the topology and make sure everything is fine and dandy. If stuff is kind of not where we want, we might do some kind of automatic retopology with ZBrush to get just the topology up and running. We cover like common practices, common pitfalls, key concepts, stuff like that. And once that's done, it's just texturing and presentation. But these are kind of put together here because this is we do like an Unreal intro and some simple rendering examples that I have and stuff like that. But this is the perfect layout. Like you have 2 weeks of concept, 4 weeks of high poly, 2 weeks of low poly, and then 2 weeks of UVs and texturing and presentation. But usually we kind of have this, the high poly runs longer, the low poly runs longer, and the UVs runs longer or shorter. Some people follow this structure, but it's if you don't, I'm not gonna run away and kind of like, oh, sorry, you're still stuck on high poly, but I am over here in the UVs part. Sorry, you're not gonna get any feedback on that. Everybody has their own kind of pace of working, and due to kind of the availability of time to invest in the program, we can't expect everybody to be at the same pace every week. And it's also kind of some people might want to kind of try something more tricky, and then that's also more risky. That might mean that you have to spend more time in one of the stages, right? Maybe you're doing something with fur, and that's going to be a very time-intensive thing if you haven't really done that before. But hopefully the very harsh scope reduction during term 2 is probably going to make you avoid that. So that's term 2. It's basically covering every step of the general creation pipeline for character art. Any question on that content, you're basically making a bust, and it's 12 weeks seems like a lot, but it is a lot as well. But it's also depending on what you want to do, and if you want to go into doing just really cool high poly creature, and that's your dream, right? Then, I mean, as long as you're aware that you're gonna miss out on some other stuff, that's completely fine for me. Like the important part is that you get out of it what you want out of it, right? Like if you want to kind of focus on like I really want a portfolio to get a job, then I'm gonna cater my feedback and scoping according to that, and also kind of put some probably harsher kind of requirements and be a little bit more not I'm never harsh in my feedback, but I'm gonna be a little bit more like this is what we need to fix to get this to a presentable level, right? Otherwise, we're gonna have to do more work. But that's all up to like we have students from every different part of life, basically. Any questions regarding term 2?
kind of have like a two-part question.
Go.
So, first, I was wondering like how individualized or like is this like more like group sort of feedback as far as like the term two? And then I guess my second question would be like, how does this compare to like studio work and like that sort of like schedule?
Okay, so kind of okay. I'm gonna do it the um, first one. Like it is a group term, right? So you're with a couple of people, right? But the groups are very small. I think my groups are everything from like it depends. Like some classes are really small, some are bigger, but it's never above. I've never had anything about like 6 or 7, I think. Oh, that became a meme, but yeah, but you get it, right? It's that was not I slipped into it. The boomer did. Um but so it's a very like small group, but with that said, like it's still very individual because the feedback is given per student, right? So whatever you bring is what you're going to get feedback on, and I track that individually for everyone. So we kind of follow up on it and make sure that we kind of put individual goals for each week and stuff like that to make sure that like every student is kind of because people go into with such different previous experience that you have to be very flexible in how you both give feedback, both set scope like limits, and also how you kind of what you kind of expect to get out of the work as well, what kind of quality you need to aim at, stuff like that. Some people also kind of maybe have just maybe they have like 10 hours per week, right, to invest because they're working full time. Then I can't really expect the same amount of work being done as like this. I had one guy was like a 19-year-old from Paris that had like it was his full-time thing. He was awesome, really good, super awesome guy. But he could like do a lot of work, right? So I put a little bit more kind of like assignments on that fella.
Gotcha.
That's the first question, hopefully answered.
Yep.
Then for the second one, that depends. Like it depends completely on what kind of studio you are. Like for example, on Helldivers, we have a different kind of timeline because everything is kind of dominated by gameplay. Gameplay is kind of the king of everything, right? So until we like gameplay and fantasy is kind of like our strong things. Like what kind of fantasy can we offer the players to enhance their experience with the game, right? Like we want to make it as awesome as possible. Some people might not think that, but it's true. And that means that we usually have like a longer timeline, but not for the creation of the high poly and concept and low poly. Like we have like this timeline, I can usually create a high poly and low poly for the enemies. If I have a concept set, give me 4 weeks and I'm done with all of it. But then we have all the kind of damage and gibbing and destruction and the secondary third UV sets, the engine implementation, the load implementation, and the readability feedback rounds and getting like feedback from players and working with the animators. They might find issues like we have issue with this range of motion thing, we have to get it back. Or maybe legal from Sony says like, oh, we hate forks or something like that. And then we can't use that. And then we have to go back and kind of just work through that, So it's a longer timeline and it's different work, right? But then you could be at a place like, for example, DICE, where like, here is the Pilot 5. I hate that I'm looking like up here because I have like this big ass monitor, but I have myself up here. I'm not like a bug. Like if I look at, but that's creepy. If I'm looking at myself, okay, I'm gonna keep it up here. So, where you get handed this concept like we need Soldier 2, and he looks like this, and you get it from like their kind of art department, and then you're like, thank you very much, and I build it in a couple of weeks, and then you like maybe you get like 2 weeks for the 2 to 4 weeks for the high poly and 2 to 4 weeks for the low poly and UVs and texturing. Then you ship that away, so you get 8 weeks. And then you have other places where like maybe you're doing like a mobile game and you have maybe 2 weeks per character, full turnaround. And you also do the rig and texturing, like the rig and animation as well, implementation. And then you have stuff like cinematic stuff where maybe you have like 6 months,
Gotcha.
So it's a very kind of up to speed. I would say that like this is, if you have no experience, this is the least amount of time if you're not doing it full time, right? If you did it full time and overtime, then you could do it way shorter. But like getting the foundation kind of this is being recorded. I hope. Yeah, I'm recording.
Yes.
To the clouds. Yes, because they're gonna be up my ass otherwise, and hopefully beep that in the recording. But I think this is kind of a good like sweet spot for it. You want to cover like the concept part because that's kind of a mindset thing. Like how do you collect feedback, like the concepts, like what are you looking for in references, what not to look for, and what are some kind of common pitfalls when you're looking at it. And especially when you're doing stuff like if you're doing like I don't do that much of like portrait work, but it's not my I'm not the portrait guy. I'm more of this is the Hydra guy.
Right.
But like how do you collect references of faces to kind of make sure you kind of don't aim for different things? How do you work with those references? And how do you structure it in a way that someone else can understand it, right? Or maybe like just if you're just picking a finished concept, then how do you break that down into something you can actually approach when you're doing it in 3D? Because there is no insinuating in 3D. You have to build it, right? You can't kind of sketch a little doodle and then that's the bag, right? You have to kind of make the bag. So, and then also doing the high poly, like there's like basically everything, nothing works usually. That's usually how it kind of goes. Like the plan is this, and then you start like step one, it doesn't work, and then you have to kind of work through that. So I would say 4 weeks is kind of a good spot to do something like just kind of that's basically with trial and error buffer kind of.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with the low poly and UVs. But I would say this workflow is the same for everything. Like the steps you do it. It's not that rigid in like the steps order. Like just because you finish the low poly doesn't mean you can't change the high poly. But you have to know how the low poly to high poly to UVs like product works to be able to kind of do that kind of flexibility. But the steps are like this is the foundation blocks. But it's not only character. It's kind of like if you're doing props or whatever. I'm doing environment art currently at work because I just felt like it, and that is the same workflow, right? I'm baking things, so I have to make that. Did that answer the question? It's not like a clear cut, like this is the workflow used at big studios, but it is the tools, the workflow of how to create things used at every studio, kind of.
Yeah, that covers it. I was just wondering from like your personal experience, but yeah, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. My personal experience, like, sure. Could be it, maybe.
Right.
I usually prefer a shorter time span because then I kind of get forced into not zooming in too much and focusing on the big picture. And then I can work more with ideas and less with pores, if that makes sense. I think that's mainly because I'm more kind of leaning towards the kind of like there is like this like a character artometer, right? And like if we can go really hard to the technical side where you're like, I like skin shading and hair. Or you can go really hard to the other side, like I wish I was a concept artist, but I'm not good enough at drawing, so I'm doing character art. And I'm more to that side, right? So I prefer the smaller kind of time frame because I can just kind of do more stuff and I just get the idea out and moving quickly.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Cool. I'm gonna go through some of the questions in the chat. At the Hilltop Preparatory School. What is the list of tools you prefer to use and learn prior to starting this program? I would probably say that it it depends, right? But there is the standard kind of loadout would be Maya, ZBrush, Substance Painter. I think those are the kind of the basics used. Me personally, I use Blender instead of Maya, and I know that there is like so much like I don't know a single studio that is not currently trying to transition more into Blender. Character art is a little bit stuck behind because we have some we're very tied to the animators, so we kind of stay, and also we're sometimes people like I don't know, character art is like X-Gen and Pair, I guess, and that's fine for now. But it's also getting changed very quickly. So I think it's like going into it with Blender instead of Maya is completely fine. for me, since I use Blender for sculpting as well currently, because that is my little side I have like this weird lamp. Okay. I use Blender for sculpting as well, so it could also be that you're just using Blender and Substance Painter and or Marmoset tool bag for baking and texturing. Most of the workflows covered by me is quite software agnostic, unless it's very specific to maybe ZBrush or Blender or something like that, or Painter, like how just like this is how I do it in Painter, right? But usually the theory of it is kind of software agnostic, so you can kind of translate it over to another software. But once you start learning a bunch of softwares, you're gonna see that there's a pattern between all of them. Did that answer your question a little bit? Cool. I could provide like a very clear list. I also have like personally that I usually give to students, like this is my list of like if you want to use Blender, these are my top recommendation of paid and free add-ons and stuff like that. But that it's way too detailed that I have to do. It's like I'm pitching for a bunch of other people. uh, cool. I'm gonna see. What other tools besides Blender? Right. So that's kind of. Is there any rig consulting or work in term two? Is there any kind of? Do you want to clarify a little bit there?
Yeah, just like you obviously, characters that are meant to be rigged and animated, right? Like, is there
Yeah.
anything there, or is this mostly just, hey, forms and kind of the more concept kind of structure?
I usually we run out of time to do any stuff like that, but most of the stuff is if everything goes to plan, I like to kind of rig it up. Like we do like a simple skeleton and pose it up to get like a base pose, because you don't want the guy to be like this. Look at my cool portfolio piece. You want it to kind of be like a take a breath out and kind of lower the shoulders a little bit and get some kind of relaxed pose going to kind of make it a little bit more appealing to non-artists looking at your portfolio. But there's no kind of like, here's how to create these kind of mechanical pistons in Maya. If that's what you're after, then you should probably go to like a rigging course, Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Mohan asks, I'm familiar with 3ds Max, Substance Painter. I would say if you use the 3ds Max, I think going to Blender is the closest cousin you're going to find to that software. It's basically the new 3ds Max, right? It has the modify structure. It has the kind of way of working. How is AI starting to affect this field, and what can artists do to make sure they continue to work on these projects into the future? That's really hard for me to answer. Things are changing very quickly. It depends on where you are located in the world and what kind of studio you're working at and what your personal opinion is regarding AI. Like I have my personal stuff that I should not go into, but it is starting to affect stuff, but I don't see like this workflow really changing, because as soon like and everything the AI, even the 3D models follow this structure in their way of creating things. Maybe not the hype, yeah. But like if you want to fix it, you usually, if you want something fixable, you have to kind of be able to understand all of these steps anyway. Otherwise, you can't really reverse engineer it and use it for your own purposes. You're gonna be locked down to that the supplier of the model to kind of keep creating your IP, which is a very risky move for any kind of long-term studio to do, right? You want to kind of keep your operations like independent in-house and make sure that it kind of you can use coders for stuff that is kind of not important to the IP in the same sense, but you still own the kind of creative power to make it yourself, right? Should a correct statement once the class are completed? I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm very kind of locked down into the character track, like I said, but like I have made recommendations for students after they have kind of gone out into the world. And also kind of followed up with students later as well to just kind of give feedback on their continued work and portfolio stuff, because usually there's like usually the track is kind of like you do term 2 and you're like you start like in the middle of term 2 you're like, oh, this project is going to be so awesome, and then by the end of it you're like, it's quite awesome, and then by the end of term 3 you're like, I hate my term 2 project. So then you start a new term 2 project of the term 3, and then once that's done, then you're like, oh, now I'm finally happy, because you're getting that much experience when you're learning the software that anything you create during term 2 is not really yeah, see you, thanks for joining. Anything you create during term 2 is actually not representative of your skill set by the end of it, right? Because you're going from 0 to hero, to say it like in a cheesy way. So you're going from like 0 experience, somewhat, maybe a little bit, to knowing the full pipeline. But like that, then what you have here is not really representative if you were to go all the way back and do it again, right? And that's why we kind of try to keep this simple and then do like really lock down for term 3, and maybe polish it up in the end. So if we go into term 3, we can see we have the same 2-week concept and blockout phase. Then we have 4-week hyperpolar creation, but then it's just kind of like 1 week locally, 1 week UVs, texturing, and then posing, implementation, and renders, because that like you should be able to scope it down so you have like, you just can kind of prepare for doing these in like one go. And the texturing can be really quick. Like if you have not a too complex project, you can do the texturing in 1 week. And then you can spend some time finally like getting it up in Unreal, doing shaders, doing kind of video presentations and stuff like that, so that you don't have to like spend a bunch of time afterwards. We have introduced some kind of like follow-up sessions. I think we're currently running 4 sessions after the term 3 has ended. That kind of follows up on this, and we kind of make sure that if you have leftover work from these terms, you get the help you need to kind of get it over the finish line and get it like ready for your portfolio. That was a very quick rundown of term 3. Is there any more questions? Regarding these 2 terms. Otherwise, you can just go for kind of like more general questions, or like questions about character art and like my opinion on things as well. Okay. No questions. It's crystal clear. Then maybe we can look at some different outcomes, and just to check on the variety of kind of levels of experience. But we have like, these were this guy's I think it was 2nd character he ever made. And he spent a lot of time, and he also did like a second one for term 3. So he did like term 2 and term 3, and he felt like he kind of shoot off too much here. So he kind of decided to just kind of wrap it up after the term 3 finished, and just kind of keep working on it. But then he's been kind of just using that same workflow he established, kind of keep creating stuff that he's still kind of working on. And I would say he has a really good portfolio going now. Also have stuff like this guy who's just doing like it's basically his first bust with a portrait, and he really kind of took all the feedback to heart, just kind of massaged all into the model, and really he was kind of open with, he wanted harsh feedback, so he got that, and he had to redo stuff a lot of times to kind of get all of this kind of detailing and stuff down to par. And I'm still not super happy with how he did the fabric, so, and he knows that, so but I'm happy with how like the armor turned out, so it's good. There were some other people that had like no experience with character art. He just wanted to do armors and learn the whole pipeline, so they did stuff like this. I think like they kind of really got the hang of the kind of contrasting in the reflective values in the texturing. that kind of reflected in the later piece as well. There's some Unreal stuff like this, which is a super cool character, which is probably this guy's first kind of character, like game art character. He has moved on to do like some fantastic pieces after this as well. This was the one he did with me. This guy who has just basically done like stylized in the game stuff before, that really wanted to do like he did like a turn 2 project that he felt was a little bit too complex, but then he was like, okay, I'm just doing a head. Okay, I'm doing a cyberpunk head. Okay, I'm doing a cyberpunk head with scan textures with like a cool rendering scene, and I'm adding hair. And then finally, it kind of turned out to this kind of cool presentation, and he was like super stoked about it. So like the range is quite wide. We also have people who kind of like they feel like, okay, I got a lot out of it, but I feel like I need to just kind of keep working on my skills, kind of make sure it's up to par for what I want to do. Because it can be quite a humbling experience, but usually it's a really good time. I always look forward to the sessions. And yeah, it's basically like for me, I do every week. Been doing it for years now, and it's just a really fun time. Yeah. Let's see what's in the chat. Have you ever tried doing freelance for small studios? Is that a good way for experience? It depends how well the small studios pays. Like, you should not work for free. At a certain level, it's good to have exposure, but I don't think working for free is, unless you have like stakes in the company, right? It's a good idea. I think if you're working for free, you could just as well be working on a portfolio work, because for most small studios, you don't create stuff that's going into your portfolio. For most game productions in general, you're not doing stuff that is portfolio ready. Like even at there is a clear kind of this, I don't know how much stuff I should say about my things, how I think at Arrowhead, but there is kind of a difference between people who are very much like portfolio artists and production artists, right? Like I'm more of I just do stuff for the game. I'm more interested in kind of the implementation and the behavior of the feature in the game than I am in creating something super highly detailed that I can post on my portfolio later. So yeah, but you got like too much of an answer. But yeah, maybe still. Okay, what softwares will be used right away once classes begin? I think the software that I recommend using is ZBrush or Blender for sculpting, and PureRef for reference gathering. There are like open source alternatives to those that you can use. PureRef is free if you don't have the money, but that's kind of all of it. Later down the line, you would need other software, but that's a different thing. Very interesting. After taking this course, what would be the best way to break into the business? What would an entry-level artist be given as task at the first job? Okay, yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think like because I have been recruiting for our studio and the other studios, like the other studios I've been at. Like when I look at the junior, for example, I first look at do they have the foundational skills, right? Can they do, like, what do I have to teach them? Can they do topology on their own? Not perfectly, but quite okay. Can they do UVs on their own? Not perfectly, but okay. Can they texture in a way that I think is technically all right? Like they don't do anything crazy, like break PBR rules and stuff like that, or make stuff that is just really ugly. And after that, I look at, do they have like obviously like the sculpting and stuff needs to be on par as well, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Like most of the stuff comes from experience and practicing on site. But then I also look at, like, depending on the role and what project, I look at the style as well, like what like type of work that they prefer to do, and what is their kind of their sauce, right? What's their kind of like what gets them going. But that's also like me at Arrowhead, which is a very kind of like, we want people to kind of be very passionate and kind of like very owning their work in a way, and doing it themselves a lot. But at a bigger studio, it might be that the junior artists might be doing helmets for a while, or just shirts, or cleaning up scans, or simple stuff like that, but it's just kind of a way to get accustomed to the ways of working at the studio, and like learning how to kind of orient your way around all the softwares and in-house tooling and stuff like that, where you just really have to kind of work your way up. And then once you kind of prove yourself that you can do those tasks efficiently, and like they feel reliable, that they can just kind of give you bigger tasks, you might do stuff like a full outfit, or you do like if you're working on a live service game, you do like cosmetics or stuff like that. Or if you're really lucky at a smaller studio, you get something like a full character or like a big enemy stuff, or like stuff like that. So that just answers the what would an entry level artist be given as task as a first job. Did that answer the question regarding the after taking this course, would it be the best way to break into the business? Maybe not the best way to break into the business. It's just kind of entry level artist tasks. I think the best way to break into the business right now is a big question mark, because it's overgoing like a very big change. I think like this is gonna be like my opinion, my kind of theory crafting, but there's a very big kind of restructuring happening, because all of the COVID kind of studios are kind of like all the live service stuff is kind of like shutting down, which kind of reshifts the whole kind of industry a little bit. And there's going to be a need for a different type of artist that is more maybe game developer driven, less than just kind of making high polish and low polish driven. And I don't know what the best way to be to break into the business, but I know that we always look for like the foundation needs to be there, the taste needs to be okay, and we don't want to be able to have to kind of spend all our time mentoring up the basics. Like we want to be able to spend our time mentoring up our studio specific ways of working. Maybe that kind of answers it. Hello, Zach. Let's see. I get lost in the chat here. Do you have input on anyone wanting to go into the toy figure industry, like in research or the pipeline, etc.? That is a little bit different. It's not quite right. You basically skip all of the low poly creation and texturing and stuff. You focus mainly on the concept and blockout and the high poly creation, and there is like a figurine specific workflows for doing that, and the requirements. I don't have any specific resources for it. Sorry. But like it's still dependent on like doing good high poly creation. I had one student who he was previously working as a practical VFX guy, or who was working as that, doing like masks for metal bands and stuff like that, and horror movie outfits and stuff like that. But then he wanted also to be able to kind of previs his stuff by doing it in 3D first to show to clients, and then after that he took like all the ZBrush knowledge to start doing like toys for clients. And then after that, he started printing stuff from like it's kind of like if you have the ZBrush stuff down, then you can kind of pivot into that quite easily, because it's not that tricky. It's the sculpting part that is hard. And my questions are career related, because I teach MS simply from non-traditional ways against it from different institutes. Yeah, I think that's good. And like you just keep shooting the career related stuff. I'm very used to yapping about that, so it's completely fine. Do you have any student works that are more focused on lower fidelity, more stylized character, like over? No, I don't really. Like I have, but they haven't really uploaded their stuff. Or I didn't have time to gather up. Like I had students that done stylized stuff, obviously, but I had if you missed the intro, we had a new kid this week, so all my time I thought I had to plan this presentation got like shuffled over to that. So I had to kind of throw it together a little bit. But I can say that my focus is on realism, PBR based stuff. Even though I personally often lean towards more stylized realism than like the Last of Us stuff. I'm not the guy to go to for like if you want to do like deadlock stuff. Even though I like that, I really like it myself, and I am like looking forward to do that myself as well sometime. Yeah. How young were you when you wanted to do this for a living? Did you start with a hand-on sketch proof before learning digital tools? I have 6 years of musical training before this, like music production and sound design for mixed like media production. Before that, I was just drawing manga and comics and creatures when I was younger. So I guess it's kind of like looking back, it's a little bit like obvious, but I had like a really long, like 10-year detour into music production. But obviously, like at work, like when I'm doing stuff in every meeting, I'm still kind of sketching and doing stuff, but digitally and like that, like kind of like being an artist kind of is like kind of like the base foundation you have to have. Like you need to be like a person who likes to be creative, and especially in character art, because you have to do you are a bit of a multi-tool. Like, oh, this character has a gun, so now you make guns as well. It's not like a, but there's never going to be like a weapon artist gets thrown a portrait or something like that. But it's usually the other way around. Like, oh, this guy drives a car, and you're making the car as well. Yeah. But I was, but when I wanted to do it for a living, I was kind of like, I don't know, 21, I think. I started quite late. But that was when I kind of like, oh, okay, I need to do something. And I drew like hard surface concept art for like a couple of years until I finally got into a school here in Stockholm. And then I went from there. Then I basically got like a sunk cost fallacy. Like I got too stuck into the character art hole to kind of be worthwhile to invest into something else. And so far, it's really fun. I like it a lot. I'm prepping for my daughter who will be paying the program. Awesome. If you have any more questions, please reach out to the school and they're happy to answer the questions. How to gather references and how to use it. Basic, that's a bit more of a core specific thing. It's a little bit okay. I'm probably gonna have to spend too much time on that and also open a bunch of other software. But usually it's kind of like if you have a finished concept, you need to break that up into stuff you can reference that is outside of the concept. So if you have like a guy with a jacket, you need to kind of find references for that jacket that you can use, because you're only going to have the concept from one view, right? So you need to find how does the seams for this type of fabric look, and how does it look from behind and from the side and stuff like that. And like there are also kind of wristbands sketched out in this. What are the wristbands? Because I need to find something I can build. And then you kind of create this kind of like, here's the guy, and then there's like arrows with stuff all over, pointing to where it's supposed to be. And then you make that in 3D, and that becomes a kind of a appropriate visualization of the 2D concept. Also, yes, we're going over the course for term 2 and term 3 as well, and just generally the character art program to answer Zachary. What's a good way of getting better at substance and getting better at PBR texturing for armors, etc.? The boring answer is just kind of look at references more. But usually it's kind of like replicating things. Like I had a certain look that I really liked. Like if I just look at like here, there's like a certain kind of way how the textures work with the subsurface on the ear here that I really, really liked. So I kind of specialized. I just looked at that and I reached out to people doing that type of look, and I kind of talked to them. And there was also kind of I don't have it here. Like there's other kind of like contrasty type of texturing that I really, really like, that I just wanted to kind of hone in on as well. So I just kind of reached out to people and talked to like people that kind of, most people are even people who are working. They get really happy when people reach out and just ask questions. But there are rules, and like the simplest way is probably to get a mentor, right? That knows that, like someone that does the stuff you want to do, or can at least give you enough guidance to get you to a state where you can self-improve, right? Because after a while, once you get to a certain level, you can keep going yourself. Like after you know how to practice anatomy, you can keep practicing. Or like, oh, there's a famous like thing, like teach a man to fish, etc. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Yeah. like texturing in general is just in VFX, this can be its own kind of full-time job, like a Vistav artist. The same with like modeling and stuff. So it's a very deep kind of topic, but usually it's just gonna find stuff that you like and try to replicate that as good as you can. And then if you can't replicate it, then reach out to someone who does do it in the way you want and see if they can just give you some pointers. And that's usually that. Any more questions? My least, what's your least favorite thing to sculpt? Furries, probably. It's been like a joke in like my friends group that people suspect me to be a furry, and they're gonna love that I say it on this recording. But and then I've been like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like sculpt the furry model or something like that, and I do it. But I'm so used to doing stuff that is disgusting that it looks like here is this guy who got turned into a cat in a laboratory or something like that, and I just kind of close my computer and then I go to bed and I'm like, I hate that I can't do this. That's probably that's probably my biggest frustration. But on the like just pure boring stuff is usually stuff that is very kind of samey, like doing like if you're doing like something that needs handmade wear and tear all over the model, like flayed leather and stuff like that. I think for me that can be very tedious because it takes a bunch of time. Okay, how many artists are actually working on a single game? What is the team makeup like? That's very different. Like you can have like for me, like I'm on the like enemies team, so I only work on the enemies on Arrowhead. Currently, like I'm also a little bit like they throw me as a bloodhound on things, but and I'm the only artist, right? So if we're doing 10 enemies, we never do, but if we did that, then I do all of them and also the concepting and stuff like that. But in a normal way, I would say like a character team can be probably like 5 to 12 people, maybe. But then like usually the character team is quite a bit smaller because it's usually less content to be made versus the world and props and stuff like that. Where you can be upwards to like 150 to 200 people on a big studio, just on the art department, if you count VFX and take art and stuff like that. And for trying to find a job on LinkedIn or something, is it better you message the art director or the hiring manager? It's obvious, but I'm thinking the art has more insight in art than hiring manager. That's quite tricky, actually. I think if you message the art director, they would be like, let's say you message our like design director at Arrowhead to get like a foot inside the door, right? You're gonna be one in like 500 messages to that guy, right? So I would probably reach out to either like the like if they have an open application, or if you are interested in that studio, just reach out to a person working on the character team. Like let's reach out to like me or Yahya or Jacob or the other guys at Arrowhead that does the armors stuff, and say like, I think you guys are doing awesome work. Like, do you have any kind of like insight into how to get the like what are you looking for when you're looking for artists and stuff like that? Because they probably have as good, because usually like if you send an application, that application gets to a review, and then they take people from the teams that review it and say like, yeah, this person can go through the door right to the rest of the interviews. And so I would probably reach out to someone on the team, right? It doesn't really matter, but I think if you send like writing to the art director could be a little bit like writing to the CEO of Facebook, and hopefully get the job at a local store, right? Yeah, no worries. Do you ever see the prop artist job being taken over by AI at some point, since it doesn't always need animating or such? Yeah, sure. I guess like the way it's going right now is there's probably a studio already doing it, right? But not all of it. Like, and the amount of studios that are currently using just like asset packs is also huge because it's the same issue. Like, okay, I need 500 shoes. Do I need to spend all my creative effort in the studio to make 500 shoes to our game about cars? Maybe not, right? So then you find some people who are really good at making shoes and they have already made 500 shoes. You buy those shoes and then that's that. And I think for those type of topics, it's probably going to be quite prevalent, I think, depending on how the outcome goes with it. But I think that's I mean that's a little bit like it's up in the air, right? We're like everybody's like watching very closely to see what happens. But I think it's going to be taking more and less work at the same time. I'm not like that's my gut feeling. Like I see it start doing high poly stuff, but I'm still not that worried because if you're a good artist, you're gonna be the best at using it, and then it's gonna. Did that answer your question a little bit? It's hard to kind of be super clear about it. Prop artists is in either way, not like in the games. I don't know a lot of prop artists. You usually like you have the environment artists, which are kind of like they're like some kind of umbrella terms. Environment artist could be someone who does environment, anything that's not the character of VFX. Or an environment artist could be someone who just does like the biomes, like he does like foliage and the terrain and stuff like that. And then you have a world artist that does something else, and then you have a prop artist, a 3D artist that does like the structures and stuff. But I think it's probably going to be more of a generalized thing where you have, like, for me, for example, I'm a character artist, but I also do, if you like, I can do some other stuff. I can do some animating. I can do some kind of environment work, kind of be a little bit more flexible and be a little bit more like moving away from the kind of this is my like discipline role and more into I'm a developer of this project and my tool set can be used in whatever way fits this project. Yeah, it's a super interesting topic and it's very kind of on top of everyone's kind of brain currently. Any more questions? Career related, portfolio related? What to have in a portfolio maybe? No worries, Hilltop. And Tina, yes, in regards to question mark. Okay. Usually I don't want because I have like okay. I'm just gonna talk. You're gonna have to listen to me just talking. I don't have any fancy kind of slides for it, but when I'm looking at the portfolio, my recommendation is usually to have at the minimum 2 pieces. And that should be one that covers that you know all the foundational skills that you need, and one that covers that you can push detail to a certain level and also like set your style, right? Like so one can be a little bit more generic, but still like a cool concept, but it's like a full character with like all the bells and whistles and a cool render and it covers that you know topology, UVs, texturing, baking, like breaking down a concept and stuff like that. Then you have the other one, which maybe is just like a face, but it's really high detail and it's a really cool, maybe orc guy or something. And you have done some really cool macro shots and you have done like something that's really interesting to you. Like maybe you'd like you like doing hair, like that's your favorite thing. So you do like a bunch of hairstyles as well, right? But those are kind of the 2 things I see needed, like a full body, like waterproof like production model thing character, and then fidelity thing, like if giving free reins, what could you do with a really cool idea, right? That could be a smaller in scope but more polished, right? And then if you have those already covered, then I would probably branch out and do something like something a bit different, like prop. Like let's say you have 2 creatures, right? But then okay, but we're also gonna have to make armors as well for characters online. Can you do that as well? Then it's really good to have like something that shows that you can do proper hard surface modeling, like a cool military radio. That's 5 billion of those in Argentine. Military radio, like a old video game console or a Game Boy or a grenade or a gun or whatever. Like you can do whatever, like or a toy or something like that. Something that features something different from character art. It can still be a character, but just using a different tool set. But then if you have those three, then I think you're in a good spot. Like that's probably enough. Like people are not going to look that long. If you have 500 portfolio projects, nobody's going to look at all of them. They're only going to look at like 2 or 3 either way. So it's best when you're applying, it's best to just kind of keep it as impactful as possible, because the people that are going to look at it initially is not going to be people working on the projects, right? They're going to be maybe HR that got some kind of preparation from the artists, and they need to be wowed by the general stuff. But this is also a topic that I cover a lot when we kind of go into the course as well. And like this stuff is usually every session is kind of like I give feedback, and when I give feedback, I fall into these kind of long tangents about topics, like left and right and stuff like that. For the portfolio for our armor specialist, is it better to make a lot of armor pieces, which takes shorter time than doing a full character? Or is it better to just do the character with armor setup, but takes longer if you need pieces on your portfolio? This is tricky because armor is multiple pieces. I would probably do, if you're doing a armor thing. Yeah, that's true. I'm the master of tangents, and you will learn a lot about Swedish pastries. But this is tricky because, like, thing for the portfolio of an armor specialist, is it better to make a lot of armor pieces, which takes shorter time than doing a full character, or is it better to just do the character with armor, etc., but it takes longer if you need pieces of portfolio? I mean, there are 2 tasks being described here. One is making a character with armor that will get the same amount of time to be built as a character with maybe no armor, right? So that's a way of working where you have to kind of account for deformation, like how things bend and stuff, like how it's going to work with range of motion, and also the general kind of coherency of the shapes and the readability of the silhouette as you add more stuff. And then on the other side is kind of like how far can you polish the pieces, right? So I would say that it would probably, for me, I would be more interested in seeing a full character, because I'm more interested in the idea that you're making than each individual piece own fidelity. Make sense? Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from doing both, right? But it will feel a little bit weird to just kind of break up like, here's this guy's armor, and here's a pose for each part of it. Any more questions? Fairly, I was thinking to make the pieces to show off texture detail. There's nothing stopping you from doing both, right? You can do the full character with the full armor and still have the pieces be really awesome in and of themselves. They are not contradicting each other. But what you could do is give that guy with the full armor a really cool prop that could be its own thing. So you have like, here's the full body with the guy with the cool staff or tech staff or whatever. But then you have a pose for the staff only because it's such a cool asset, you know. That's probably like how I would do it. If I were to kind of break it down. Yeah, fire. Like the guy with the staff, our savior in every like type of like dry like a period of no ideas. I really didn't find the right word. Cool. Any more questions regarding kind of like requirements of like availability of time and stuff like that? Because usually we have students that have everything from like full-time availability to like maybe a 6 to 7 hours per week. So that's not really a big differentiator like that. Like you're still going to be able to take part of the program properly. It's just going to be a very different type of scoping exercise, because the big part for me as the one doing the mentoring, is that even if you just have a small amount of time, there's nothing stopping us to making sure that you get the full tool set, so that when you're done with Vertex, you can kind of move on and continue growing on your own, right? I mean, what do you think about MetaHuman and character creator for character artists? I mean, it depends, right? You could, it has pros and cons. It's obviously enabling smaller studios to do more fidelity work with mocap animation. And it does probably contribute to a lot of kind of like general kind of quality updates. I think like a lot of, it's probably going to leave what a lot of people call quality slop games. It's just like the Unreal type MetaHuman look, which will lead for a lot, since a lot of studios don't have time to kind of break down MetaHuman to create their own kind of version of it. It's going to be a generalization of the character art direction for a lot of games, I think. And that's the same for the, if you use them for like character creator or stuff like that. But as a tool, it's fantastic. There's no hate from my side. But I don't cover it that much. I cover the authoring of the content from base. I come from a fashion background. Is Marvelous Design better than Clo for game that Marvelous Designer and Clo is the same program, but with kind of targeted audiences. So Marvelous Designer is the one for production and games, basically. And Clo is the one if you want to send it up away to a fabric, like a factory, and produce it. I also know Marvelous Designer, by the way. I can just say, like, we cover Marvelous Designer if your project features it. For example, I think that was me. This project uses Marvelous for all the pieces. So we kind of go over how to kind of move stuff between Marvelous to ZBrush and stuff like that and do the processing of it. But it's not something that I recommend, actually. A lot of people is like, Marvelous is the best ever. But I prefer to be able to sculpt it as well. So like I think that you don't feel kind of locked down by the software. You should be able to kind of create models without Marvelous, because suddenly you're gonna get like, oh, I finally landed my first gig, and they're gonna be like, we don't have Marvelous Designer, and you're like, I can't make anything then, and I don't want you to get into that boat. So I kind of just kind of make sure that we focus on sculpting even the fabric as far as we can, unless you really want to get into Marvelous. But Marvelous could be its own kind of 24 weeks program, right? So usually if we use it for like smaller parts, or if you have a lot of time on your hands. I think the topology MetaHuman gives us is most useful. Sure. I mean, whatever works. And I use the MetaHuman eyes for everything. I just kind of rip them out and put them into whatever I throw into Unreal. And I think that's the case for most games that use Unreal. There's no need to kind of re-engineer those really well-made eyes. Any more questions?
I have a question. It's more like a general career sort of question. For at least in your case, have you found that like working at different studios, have you had to like move around a lot or go to different countries or anything like that, or have you been able to
No.
stay one place?
I mean, I'm lucky that I lived in Stockholm, which is kind of 90% of Sweden's game industry, and Sweden has a very large industry. So you can probably jump around a full career in Stockholm only. But for other people that I worked with, they have moved around a lot. Everything from like they started in Iran, they moved to Malaysia, then they worked in Turkey, and then they moved to Sweden, and now they're in Canada. But that is kind of that's not the norm, I would say.
Gotcha.
If you, yeah, it depends also. Just like remote jobs are kind of like shrinking away a little bit, sadly. But so if you're located in a way where it's a really dry area for video game development, then either you have to really find maybe a smaller studio that still supplies the remote stuff, or like a co-development studio, because that's the thing that's growing a lot. Like a lot of the bigger studios wants their productions to be flexible, so they can kind of scale up when needed and scale down when they don't have content to bring. So they work with a lot of like co-devs and stuff like that. It's kind of like like implemented kind of outsourcing, kind of like they work on full features on the game, right? So you work at the studio that working for another studio, and they still offer more remote stuff. So, but otherwise, you might need to work to move to like one big hub, and then you're kind of set.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
also a
you.
little bit like curious to see where that's going to be in a couple of years, because the industry is changing so much. What about salary for juniors, mid, and seniors? That's like that's a crazy, like, where are you located? What's your experience? How much do you have going in? What's your like negotiation tactic, stuff like that. So it's impossible for me to say. But bigger studios in richer countries, I guess, pays quite well. But I would say that like I've heard a lot about kind of like overtime and stuff like that from a lot of people. But in Sweden, I don't feel like that is the norm. I feel like we have a very good work-life balance in the games industry as a whole. And we're getting more and more recognition as a proper workforce. So it's not the Wild West it used to be in good and bad, right? So it's getting a little bit more kind of generalized. The industry is maturing a little bit, uh, at least here in Sweden. I check the time, make sure I'm not completely off. Yeah, I think we are kind of running out of time. Do we have any like final questions, or do you feel like you have gotten like a quite okay idea of like what we cover, what we do during the character art track? Well, yeah, one thumbs up. Okay, this is probably gonna be one of the final questions that I have time to answer. How do you go about being a flexible artist when developing a where did I go? Is my camera still on? Yeah, it is. How do you go about being a flexible artist when developing your skills in terms of being a character artist slash environment artist? I think it's a little bit tricky to be both, because like to get into the industry, you have to kind of get through a bottleneck where you're like, I'm good enough to provide a service at the studio in this area. And then after that, once you're in, you can start kind of broadening up again. I think it's very hard to kind of go as I'm a general artist. Just let me do anything, you know. I think usually when you're learning, it's quite good to find something you're passionate about to kind of push through the sluggish parts, and then just invest time into that. Because all the kind of 3D skills you get from that is going to be transferable to other like parts of the discipline. But it's better to kind of not be too spread thin. Um, Unless you want to work at the like just in the studios, or you have a really long time horizon for when you need a job. Uh, did that answer your question? Awesome. Do we have any final questions? Okay, yeah, sure. Just add me on LinkedIn. That's completely fine. And if you have more questions from this session, just feel free to send me a message on wherever you can find me, or reach out to the school directly. Uh, I'm going to final call for final questions before we wrap up. Cool. Well, it's been awesome. I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to thank you for taking the time. Hopefully, I'll see you around, and I'm going to stop recording. Boom.